My sister quit her job to start her so-called exploring phase with her boyfriend. While expecting me to support them, I refused and moved away. My family accused me of abandoning them, but I left anyway. I was sitting in my cubicle halfway through a turkey sandwich when my phone buzzed with Madison's message. "Hey sis, big news. I'm finally doing it. Quitting the salon tomorrow." Brandon and I talked it over, and we decided I needed time to find myself. Figure out what I really want to do with my life. You'll take care of us while I figure things out, right? I know you've got that great job and no kids or anything, so it just makes sense. We can move in next weekend. I read it 3 times. Each time my blood pressure climbed a little higher. My sister Madison was 29, 2 years younger than me. She had been working as a receptionist at a hair salon for the past 6 years, making decent money with tips. Her boyfriend Brandon was 32 and worked sporadically as a freelance graphic designer, which mostly meant he played video games while occasionally updating someone's logo. They'd been together for 4 years, living in a cramped apartment that his parents partially subsidized. I sat down with my sandwich. My hands were shaking. The audacity was almost impressive. Almost. I typed back, "That's not on me." 3 little dots appeared, immediately disappeared, appeared again. "What do you mean we're family? This is what family does." I didn't respond. Instead, I walked straight to my manager's office and asked if the Singapore position was still open. The one they've been trying to fill for 3 months. The one that came with a massive salary increase, full relocation package, and a 3-year contract starting Monday. "You're interested?" Diana looked stunned. "You said you couldn't possibly move internationally." "I changed my mind. I want it. I'll sign today." 6 hours later, I had a contract in my email. I signed it electronically at 6:23 p.m., sitting in my car in the parking lot. My hands were steady this time. The text from Mom came through at 6:33 p.m. "Marilyn Marie Richardson, your sister just called me sobbing. She said you refuse to help her when she needs you most. How could you be so selfish? She's family. We take care of family. Call me immediately." I stared at the message. The guilt tried to creep in the way it always had my entire life. But something was different now. Something had finally snapped. I called Mom. "Marilyn, thank God. Listen, Madison is really struggling right now. Mom, I'm moving to Singapore on Monday. I accepted a job transfer. I won't be able to help Madison because I'll be living on the other side of the world." Silence. Complete, total silence. "You are moving to Singapore for at least 3 years, maybe longer. You can't be serious. You can't just leave your family when we need you." "Actually, I can. I already signed the contract." "This is because of Madison's text, isn't it? You're being petty and spiteful." Something in me cracked open years of something I'd been holding back. "You want to know what's petty? Mom? Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you about the last 15 years of my life." "Marilyn, no. You're going to listen. I was 17 when Dad died. Heart attack, sudden and brutal. He was the parent who actually saw me, who came to my track meets and helped me with calculus homework. Mom had always been closer to Madison, her baby girl, who needed more attention, more support, more everything. The morning had happened. I'd been getting ready for school. Dad had been drinking his coffee at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper like he did every morning. He looked up and smiled at me, asked if I was ready for my history presentation. I'd said yes. He told me he was proud of me. 20 minutes later, Mom was screaming from their bedroom. The funeral was packed with people. Dad had been well-liked at his engineering firm, active in our community. Everyone had stories about his kindness, his humor, his generosity. I stood there in a black dress I borrowed from my friend Emma, shaking hands and accepting condolences from strangers while feeling completely numb. Madison couldn't even get through the service. She'd had a panic attack halfway through, and Mom had to take her out. I'd sat in that pew alone, listening to the pastor talk about a man I'd never see again. And something inside me had gone very quiet and very still. After Dad died, everything changed. I was starting my senior year. Madison was 15 and fell apart completely. I understood that grief is different for everyone. But while Madison got therapy and extended absences from school and Mom's constant hovering, I got expectations. "You're so strong, Marilyn. You're handling this so well. I need you to be strong for your sister." I didn't get to fall apart. I had to maintain my grades because I'd already applied for scholarships. I had to get into college because we couldn't afford it otherwise. I had to work 20 hours a week at the grocery store to help with bills while Madison got to focus on healing. I got into UCLA with a full ride. Mom cried, but not happy tears. "It's so far away. How can you leave us right now? Madison still needs you. I need you. Madison had thrown a fit when I'd shown her my acceptance letter. Actually thrown things across the room. She'd screamed that I was abandoning her, that I didn't care about the family, that I was selfish for even applying somewhere that far. You could go to community college here, Mom had said, her voice tight. Save money, be close to home where you're needed. But the scholarship covered everything. Room, board, tuition, books. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. And some part of me knew that if I didn't take it, I'd never escape the role they assigned me. I went anyway. It was the first selfish thing I'd ever done, and the guilt almost killed me. The first month at UCLA, I called home every single day. Madison refused to talk to me. Mom would get on the phone and sigh heavily, updating me on how Madison had cried all through dinner, how she'd locked herself in her room for hours, how she wasn't eating properly. She misses you so much, Mom would say, and the implication was clear. This is your fault. I'd offered to come home on weekends. Mom said that would just make it harder when I left again. I'd offered to video chat with Madison. She'd refused. I'd sent care packages, long letters, funny cards. They went unanswered. By October, I was having panic attacks in my dorm room, convinced I'd made a terrible mistake. My roommate, a girl named Sarah from Portland, finally sat me down. Your family is manipulating you, she'd said bluntly. Can't you see that they want you to feel so guilty that you'll drop out and come home? I defended them. Of course they weren't manipulating me. They were just grieving, just struggling. But Sarah's words had planted a seed. During college, I worked 2 jobs while maintaining a 3.9 grade point average. I called home 3 times a week. I came back for every holiday, paying for plane tickets I couldn't afford. Madison attended community college for 1 semester, then dropped out because she needed to find her passion. Mom supported this decision. When I graduated and got my first real job, I started sending money home. Not because anyone asked directly, but because Mom would casually mention the electric bill was high this month, or Madison needed new tires, or the house needed repairs. Each time I'd transfer money. Each time I'd eat ramen for dinner to make up the difference in my budget. My starting salary was $52,000 a year, which felt like a fortune after being a broke college student. But after taxes, rent, student loans for the small amount not covered by scholarships, and the constant flow of money back home, I was barely scraping by. I remember one particularly awful month when I'd sent $600 to cover Madison's car insurance after she'd let it lapse. That same week, my own car had broken down. I'd needed $400 for repairs. I didn't have it. I'd had to borrow money from Sarah, who by then was working in Seattle, but still my closest friend. This is insane, she told me over the phone. You're going into debt to fund your sister's irresponsibility. It's just temporary, I'd insisted, until she gets on her feet. Marilyn, she's never going to get on her feet if you keep catching her every time she falls. I paid Sarah back over 3 months, $50 at a time. Madison moved out at 23 to live with her first serious boyfriend, Tyler. That lasted 8 months before he kicked her out for cheating on him. She moved back home. Mom called me crying about how heartbroken Madison was, how she needed support. The call had come at 200 Henry. I'd been asleep, exhausted from a 14-hour workday. Mom had been nearly hysterical. She won't stop crying. She won't eat. Marilyn. I'm really worried about her. Can you come home this weekend? She needs to see you. She needs to know her family is here for her. I'd taken a personal day on Friday, driven 4 hours to get home, spent the weekend listening to Madison sob about Tyler and how he'd never appreciated her and how all men were trash. She'd barely acknowledge my presence except to accept my sympathy. Sunday night, as I was leaving, she'd asked if I could leave her some cash for gas and food. I'd given her $120. It was every dollar I had in my wallet, money I'd budgeted for groceries that week. I sent $1,200 to cover Madison's credit card debt from the relationship. Then came Brandon. In the beginning, he seemed different. He had a job, his own apartment. Madison moved in with him after 3 months. Mom was thrilled. See, she's finally getting her life together. I'm so relieved. You must be too. I hoped Madison had found happiness. But over the years, the calls started again. Could I help with Madison's car payment just this once? Could I loan them money for rent? Could I cover their pet deposit when they got a dog? Each request came with assurances that it was the last time that they were getting back on track. I said yes every single time. Last Christmas, I'd spent $800 on gifts for Madison, Brandon, and Mom. I'd flown home for 4 days, spending another $650 on plane tickets. Madison gave me a $15 candle from Target. Mom gave me a framed photo of Madison and me from childhood, which I suspected had been in the attic for years. The candle still had a price sticker on the bottom. I'd found it later when I unpacked, tucked in my suitcase. Holiday cheer scented clearance rack. I'd sat on my bed in my empty apartment holding that stupid candle, and something had cracked inside me. Not broken, cracked like a windshield before it shatters completely. I bought Madison a professional makeup kit she'd mentioned wanting $350. I'd gotten Brandon a high-end gaming headset, $200. Mom got a spa day package, $250. I'd spent hours picking out thoughtful gifts, trying to show them I paid attention. I cared. I was grateful to be part of the family. A clearance candle. On Christmas Eve, Madison announced she was thinking about going back to school for massage therapy. It would cost $800,000 for the program. She looked at me expectantly. The entire family had been gathered in the living room. Madison had announced it like it was exciting news, but her eyes had been on me the whole time. "That's great," I'd said. "How are you planning to pay for it?" The room had gotten quiet. Madison's smile had faltered. "Well, I was hoping. I mean, you've always been so good about helping me invest in my future." Invest. Like the money I'd given her over the years was some kind of mutual fund that would pay dividends. "I'll think about it," I'd said and changed the subject. Later, Mom pulled me aside. "You know you're in a better position to help. You don't have kids. You make good money. Madison is really trying to improve her life." I promised to consider it. I never did. Madison never brought it up again, which told me how serious she'd actually been. But here's what I found out later, months later, from a cousin who felt bad about staying quiet. Madison had already been accepted into the program. She'd been telling people for weeks that I was paying for it. She bragged about her generous older sister who was funding her career change. When the tuition deadline passed and I hadn't sent money, she told everyone I backed out at the last minute, that I'd promised to help and then changed my mind, that I'd let her down. I'd been made the villain in a story I didn't even know I was part of. 3 months ago, I'd received a text from Madison asking if I could co-sign a loan for a new car. Hers was old but functional. She wanted something nicer. I'd said no for the first time in my life. Madison didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. When she finally did, she acted like nothing had happened. But there was an edge to her texts, a coldness. All of this came pouring out to Mom on the phone. 15 years of being the responsible one, the strong one, the one who sacrificed so everyone else could be comfortable. "I have given everything to this family," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I put myself through college, I worked myself to exhaustion, I sent money I didn't have, I put my own life on hold over and over again. And you know what I realized today, Mom? Nobody has ever asked me what I need. Nobody has ever considered what I want, not once in 15 years. That's not fair, Marilyn. We've always appreciated." "Have you?" "Because appreciation isn't asking for more money. Appreciation isn't expecting me to derail my life because Madison doesn't feel like working anymore. Appreciation would have been asking me how I was doing when Dad died instead of telling me to be strong for Madison. Appreciation would have been celebrating my achievements instead of making me feel guilty for having them." Mom's voice got sharp. "Your father would be so disappointed in you right now." The words hit like a physical blow, but instead of crumpling, I felt something clarify inside me. "No, Mom. Dad would be proud that I'm finally putting myself first. He's the one who taught me I was worth something. You're the one who taught me I was only valuable for what I could give everyone else." I hung up. My hands were shaking again, but this time from adrenaline rather than anger. The next 3 days were chaos. Madison called me 17 times. I didn't answer. She left voicemails that progressed from hurt to angry to desperate. "How can you do this to me? I'm your sister. You're being a selfish person. I hope you know that. Please live. Please just talk to me. I'm scared. I don't know what to do." I listened to each voicemail once, then deleted it. Some part of me needed to hear them to understand exactly what I was walking away from. Her voice in that last message had been small and broken, genuinely afraid. The old me would have crumbled, would have called back, apologized, figured out some compromise. The new me hit delete and continued packing. Mom texted constantly long paragraphs about family obligations, about how I was abandoning them, about how she'd raised me better than this. She tried guilt, anger, and finally, bargaining. What if Madison promises to get another job right away? What if she only stays with you for a few months? What if we all sit down and talk about this? Between the messages from Mom, there were texts from Madison's friends, people I barely knew. Apparently, Madison had rallied her troops, told them her heartless sister was abandoning her in her time of need. How can you do this to Madison? She's always talked about how close you two are. Family is supposed to be there for each other. This is really messed up. I hope you can live with yourself. I blocked every number I didn't recognize. Then I blocked some I did. My own friends were a different story. Jessica, who'd known me since college, sent a single text. Finally, I'm so proud of you. Let me know if you need help packing. Sarah called from Seattle. Oh my God, you actually did it. You actually chose yourself. Marilyn, I'm legitimately emotional right now. This is the best thing you've ever done. My coworker Amanda, who I'd gotten drinks with a few times, sent, heard about Singapore. That's incredible. Let me know if you need any recommendations. My brother lived there for 2 years. The contrast was staggering. People who actually cared about me were excited and supportive. People who saw me as a resource were outraged and attacking. Friday afternoon, I got a Facebook message from Tyler Madison's ex-boyfriend from years ago. Hey, I heard about what's going down. Just wanted to say good for you. Madison told everyone I was the bad guy when we broke up. But the truth is, she was using me the whole time. Cheated on me, maxed out a credit card I stupidly added her to, then played the victim when I kicked her out. I'm guessing she's doing the same thing to you now. You're smart to get out. Good luck in Singapore. I stared at that message for a long time. Madison had always painted herself as the victim in that relationship, the sweet girlfriend betrayed by her cruel boyfriend. I believed her because she was my sister. Because family believes family. How much of what I believed about my family was actually true? How many stories had I swallowed without question? Because it was easier than seeing reality. I responded once. I'm moving to Singapore on Monday. This decision is final. I need space from both of you. Then I muted their numbers. My best friend Jessica came over on Saturday to help me pack. She'd known my family situation for years and had been increasingly vocal about how they treated me. I'm so proud of you, she said, wrapping my dishes in newspaper. Do you know how many times I've watched them bleed you dry? How many times I've bitten my tongue while you made excuses for them? Why didn't you say something? Would you have listened? She was right. I wouldn't have. I'd been too deep in the pattern, too conditioned to believe that being a good daughter and sister meant sacrificing everything. Sunday morning, I got an email from Mom. The subject line was, "Please read important." The email was long. She clearly spent time on it. It talked about how she'd been reflecting on our conversation, how maybe she'd put too much pressure on me over the years, how she wanted to understand my perspective. It was almost enough to make me waver, but then I got to the last paragraph. That said, I really think you're making a huge mistake with this Singapore job. It's so far away. And what if something happens to Madison or me? What if we need you? I think you should reconsider. There will be other job opportunities, but you only have one family. Please think about what's really important here. Love, Mom. I deleted the email. Monday morning arrived. My apartment was empty, except for the few suitcases I was taking with me. Everything else was in storage. I'd be staying in corporate housing in Singapore until I found my own place. My phone rang as I was loading my car to head to the airport, a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered, "Marilyn, it's Brandon." I almost hung up. "What do you want?" "Listen, I know things are messed up right now, but you have to understand how hard this is for Madison. She's been crying for days. She really thought you'd help us out. Did Madison put you up to calling me?" "No, She's really upset and I'm worried about her. We were counting on you. You were counting on me funding your girlfriend's unemployment while she finds herself. Do you realize how insane that sounds? It's not like that. She just needs some time to figure out her next move. Why can't you support her? You're her boyfriend." Silence. My design work is really inconsistent right now, and my parents said they'd cut me off if Madison moved back in with me at their place. So your plan was to make me responsible for both of you. You don't have kids, you make bank. It's not like it would have been that hard for you. The entitlement was staggering. This conversation is over. Don't call me again. I hung up and blocked the number. The flight to Singapore was 16 hours with a layover in Tokyo. I spent most of it sleeping, the kind of deep, dreamless sleep I hadn't experienced in years. My body knew what my mind was still processing. I was finally free. Singapore was overwhelming at first. The humidity, the crowds, the incredible mix of languages and cultures. My corporate apartment was small but modern with a view of Marina Bay. My new office was sleek and professional, my colleagues welcoming. The first week was a blur of orientation sessions, paperwork, and trying to adjust to the time difference. I'd wake up at 300 a.m., wide awake, my body insisting it was afternoon. I'd stumble to my apartment's tiny balcony and watch the city wake up, lights flickering on in buildings across the bay. Everything was different here. The food, the weather, the pace of life. The MRT Singapore subway system was cleaner and more efficient than anything I'd experienced in California. People actually queued politely instead of shoving onto trains. The streets were spotless. There were rules for everything and people followed them. I'd expected to feel lonely. Instead, I felt light. My first project was a regional marketing analysis working with teams in Singapore, Hong Kong, and Sydney. My manager, Cheney, was a sharp woman in her 40s who'd moved to Singapore from Taiwan 15 years ago. During our first one-on-one, she'd looked at me carefully. "You seem relieved to be here," she'd said. "Not excited, relieved. Are you running from something or toward something?" I hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Both, I think," she nodded. "Good answer. Running from something is fine, as long as you're building something better. Just make sure you don't spend so much time running that you forget to actually live." It was good advice. For the first 2 weeks, I kept my phone on airplane mode except for checking work emails. I knew I was avoiding the inevitable, but I needed the space to adjust to settle into this new life without the constant weight of home dragging me down. When I finally turned on my messaging apps, I had 127 texts from Mom and 89 from Madison. I didn't read most of them. The preview text was enough, but there was also a message from my Aunt Carol, Dad's sister. We'd always gotten along, but she lived in Oregon, and I only saw her every few years. "Hey, Marilyn, your mom called me upset about you moving to Singapore. I told her it sounded like an amazing opportunity and she should be proud. She didn't like that. Anyway, I wanted to say I'm happy for you. Your dad would be too. You're doing the right thing. Love you, kiddo." I cried reading that message, the first real tears I'd shed through all of this. Work was incredible, challenging, engaging, exactly what I needed. My boss, Cheney, was brilliant and supportive. My team was talented and collaborative. I was learning new systems, contributing to major projects, and feeling genuinely valued for the first time in my career. One afternoon about a month in, I stayed late finishing a presentation. Around 7:00 p.m., Sheeny stopped by my desk. "You're still here just wrapping up the Hong Kong analysis." She pulled up a chair. "Can I tell you something? When we hired you, I looked at your resume and saw someone who was severely underpaid and underpromoted for your skill level. You'd been at your last company for 6 years with minimal advancement. That usually tells me one of two things. Either the employee is mediocre, or they're being taken advantage of. Your work told me it wasn't the first option. I didn't know what to say. I'm telling you this because I see you doing it again. Staying late every night, volunteering for extra projects, working through lunch. You're excellent at your job. You don't have to prove anything. I just want to make sure I'm contributing. You're contributing plenty during business hours. Go home, Marilyn. Actually, live in the city you moved to. Otherwise, what was the point of coming here?" She was right. I'd been replacing one form of self-sacrifice with another. I made friends, actual friends who didn't know my history, who saw me as just Marilyn, not as the responsible sister or the ATM daughter. I went to hawker centers and tried every kind of food I could find. I explored gardens by the bay and Sentosa Island. I took a weekend trip to Bali. My cubicle neighbor, a guy named David from Australia, invited me to a board game night his wife hosted every Friday. That's where I met Priya, who worked in finance and had the kind of dry, cutting sense of humor that made me laugh until my stomach hurt. We bonded over our shared experience of overbearing mothers and became fast friends. Through Priya, I met more people. Her rock climbing group, her book club, her husband's cricket team that always needed people to come watch and drink beer. Suddenly, my calendar was full of actual social events with people who invited me because they enjoyed my company, not because they needed something from me. I was happy, genuinely, surprisingly happy. 6 weeks into my new life, I finally unblocked Mom and Madison. The messages that came through were a journey. The first few weeks had been anger and guilt-tripping. Then came the bargaining phase, promises that things would be different if I just came home. Then confusion about why I wasn't responding. Finally, radio silence for the past 2 weeks. I sent a message to the family group chat that included Mom Madison and a few aunts and uncles. "Hi everyone. I wanted to let you know I'm settled in Singapore and doing well. This has been an incredible opportunity and I'm really happy with my decision. I need everyone to understand that I'm not available for financial support anymore. I'm not a backup plan or a safety net. I love you all, but I need to prioritize my own life now. I hope you can respect that." The responses were mixed. Aunt Carol sent a heart emoji. Uncle Jim, Dad's brother, wrote, "Good for you, kiddo." A couple of cousins sent congratulations. Mom wrote, "I'm glad you're safe. I wish you'd answer when I call. We have a lot to talk about." Madison didn't respond at all. 3 months in, I got an email from Madison. Not a text, an actual email. "Liv, I don't really know what to say. I've been really angry at you, but Jessica told me some things that made me think. She said, I've been taking advantage of you for years and didn't even realize it. I got defensive at first, but then I really thought about it, about all the times you helped me, and how I never really appreciated it or even thanked you properly. I don't know if this matters now, but I got a job. 2 jobs, actually. I'm working at a different salon and bartending 3 nights a week. Brandon and I broke up. He wasn't willing to work harder, and I realized I was dating someone who wanted to coast on other people's money, kind of like I was doing. I'm not asking you to forgive me or come back or anything. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to do better. I'm sorry for how I treated you. You deserve better from me." I read the email 5 times. It felt genuine in a way Madison's communication rarely did, raw and honest. I wrote back, "Thanks for reaching out. I'm proud of you for taking those steps. I hope you keep it up. I'm not ready for regular communication yet, but I appreciate the apology. Take care of yourself." It wasn't reconciliation, but it was something. A small opening in the door I'd slammed shut. Mom was harder. She called once a month, always around dinner time, my time, which was early morning hers. The few times I answered, the conversations were strained. She struggled to ask about my life without segueing into her own problems or trying to make me feel guilty for being away. After one particularly frustrating call where she spent 40 minutes talking about how hard it was to manage everything alone, I said something I'd been holding back. "Mom, I love you, but you need to hear this. You made me responsible for holding this family together when I was 17 years old. You put adult burdens on me while letting Madison stay a child. You taught me that my value came from what I could provide, not from who I was. That's why I left. I didn't leave to punish you. I left to save myself." She was quiet for a long time. "I did the best I could after your father died. I know you did, but your best wasn't good for me. And I need you to acknowledge that instead of making me feel guilty about protecting myself." Another long pause. "I'll try. This is hard for me, Marilyn. It's been hard for me for 15 years. Mom, we hung up shortly after. She didn't call again for 6 weeks. Year 2 in Singapore brought promotions and new adventures. I started dating a software engineer named Marcus who was from Chicago. We bonded over being American expats and our shared love of terrible action movies. It wasn't serious, but it was fun and healthy and uncomplicated. I traveled to Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia. I took up rock climbing at an indoor gym and discovered I loved it. I made a close friend named Priya, who worked in my building and shared my dark sense of humor. I barely thought about home anymore, not because I'd forgotten, but because I'd built a life that didn't revolve around other people's needs. Madison sent occasional updates via email. She'd been promoted to assistant manager at the salon. She was dating someone new, a teacher who seemed stable. She'd started paying off her credit card debt. The emails were brief but consistent, and I appreciated them more than long apologies would have meant. Mom and I talked every other month. The conversations were still awkward but less fraught. She was learning to ask about my life without immediately pivoting to her own struggles. It was progress, even if it was slow. Then came the call that changed things. It was 2 years and 4 months after I'd left. Mom called on a Tuesday, which was unusual. Her voice was shaky. "Marilyn, I need to tell you something. I went to the doctor last week. They found something during my mammogram. It's breast cancer stage 2. My stomach dropped. "What's the treatment plan? Lumpectomy followed by radiation? They're optimistic about the prognosis, but I'm scared, honey. I'm really scared." For the first time in years, she sounded like she actually needed me. Not my money or my sacrifice, but me. "I'm here, Mom. I can't fly home right now because of work, but I'm here. We'll get through this." Over the next few months, we talked weekly, real conversations about her fears, her treatment, her life. She told me stories about Dad I'd never heard. She asked about my work, my friends, my relationship with Marcus. She apologized, really apologized for the pressure she'd put on me. "I was so overwhelmed after your dad died. Madison was falling apart, and you seemed so strong. I leaned on you because you could handle it, but I never stopped to ask if you should have to. I took your strength for granted, and I turned you into a parent when you should have just been my daughter. I'm sorry." I cried during that conversation, the kind of crying that releases years of pain. "Thank you for saying that, Mom." Madison stepped up during Mom's treatment. She took her to appointments, stayed with her after surgery, managed medications. She sent me updates and photos. In one picture, she and Mom were making silly faces in the hospital, Mom in a gown and Madison wearing a ridiculous wig from the gift shop. Trying to keep spirits up, Madison texted, "We miss you though. You're doing great." I wrote back and I meant it. Mom's treatment was successful. By month 6, her scans were clear. The relief was overwhelming. I flew home for a week during her final radiation treatment. It was strange being back in California in the house I'd grown up in. Everything felt smaller somehow. Madison picked me up from the airport. She looked different, more mature, more grounded. She hugged me tight and held on longer than I expected. "I really missed you, Liv. I missed you too." The week was surprisingly good. We didn't fall back into old patterns. Madison didn't ask for anything except my time. Mom didn't guilt-trip me about being away. We cooked together, watched movies, looked through old photo albums. On my last night, we sat in the backyard with wine and the photo album spread around us. "I almost destroyed this family," Mom said quietly. "When you left, I was so angry. I couldn't understand why you'd abandon us. But you didn't abandon us. You saved yourself." And watching Madison step up these past few months, watching her become responsible and capable, I realized I'd been enabling her for years. Enabling both of us, really. "We needed you to leave. I didn't want to hurt you," I said. "I know, but you had to hurt us to help us." That's a terrible position to put someone in. Madison wiped her eyes. "I was so mad at you for leaving. I felt abandoned. But Jessica was right. I was treating you like a bank account, not a sister. I didn't even see you as a real person with your own needs. You were just there to help me. I'm ashamed of that now. You've grown up a lot. I told her I had to. You weren't there to catch me anymore." It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had as a family. I flew back to Singapore the next day. Marcus picked me up from the airport. "How was it?" he asked. "Healing," I said. "Actually healing." 3 years into my contract, my company offered me a permanent position with another significant raise. I signed without hesitation. Singapore was home now. Poor. Madison came to visit 6 months later, paying her own way. She stayed for a week and we did all the tourist things. She marveled at the gardens by the bay, ate her way through Chinatown, and took about 1,000 photos. "I get why you stayed," she said on her last night. "This place is amazing and you're different here. Lighter." "I'm the person I was supposed to be," I said. "I like this version of you. I'm sorry it took you long to find her." "You didn't lose me. We just need a distance to find a better way to be sisters." We hugged at the airport, and this time when we said goodbye, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a new chapter. Mom never visited. International travel was hard for her, and I understood. But we video called monthly, and the conversations were good, real. She told me about her book club and her garden. I told her about work promotions and weekend trips. We were building something new from the rubble of what had broken. 4 years after leaving, I was promoted to regional director. At 35, I was managing teams across 3 countries and making more money than I'd ever imagined. I had friends who felt like family. I had a life I built entirely on my own terms. Sometimes I thought about that text from Madison, the one that had changed everything. The entitled assumption that I'd sacrifice my life for hers without question. The expectation that had been so deeply ingrained in our family dynamic that she hadn't even considered I might say no. I didn't regret what I'd done. Not for a second. Setting that boundary, making that choice, signing that contract, had been the hardest and best decision of my life. My family had called me selfish. They'd accused me of abandoning them in their time of need. But I hadn't abandoned anyone. I'd finally stopped abandoning myself. The truth was that you can't save people who won't save themselves. You can't sacrifice yourself into someone else's growth. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let people face the consequences of their choices. Madison had needed to learn responsibility. Mom had needed to learn that love isn't the same as enabling. And I needed to learn that I mattered too, that my dreams and happiness were just as important as anyone else's. The boundaries I set weren't walls. They were bridges to healthier relationships, even if getting there required everything to fall apart first. Last month, Madison sent me a photo. She was standing in front of her own salon, keys in hand. She'd saved for 3 years and bought it outright. "Did it myself," she wrote. "No one's money but mine. Wish you were here to celebrate. I'm so proud of you," I sent it back. And I meant it with everything in me. That night, I stood on my balcony overlooking the Singapore skyline, the lights of the city spreading out like stars. My phone buzzed with messages from friends making plans for the weekend. Marcus was coming over later with Thai takeout. Priya wanted to know if I was free to go climbing on Saturday. My life was full not with obligation or guilt or sacrifice, but with joy, with choice, with the kind of freedom that comes from finally putting yourself first. Somewhere across the world, my family was learning to stand on their own feet. They were learning to be whole without using me as a crutch. It had taken an ocean between us to make it possible. I didn't resent them anymore. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt free. And that freedom I'd learned was absolutely worth it.